This is lesson 5.3, part 2. In this part, I'm going to show you how to factor various different types of polynomials. So this entire video is about factoring. The first three types of factoring would involve these three that you see here. So the first thing that we will do whenever you're factoring is you always look for a GCF. So in this top example, our GCF is going to be 3x. So if we divide out a 3x, we would have 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. From here, we take our trinomial and factor it. Since the leading coefficient is 2, we would factor using the tic-tac-toe board. 2 times 3 is 6. To make a 6, we have 2 and 3, or we have 1 and 6. Of these options, the only ones that add up to 5 would be 2 and 3, so we'll use those. Then take out our GCF for the row. For the top row is just x. For the first column is 2x. For the second column is 3. So factoring this, we get 3x times 2x plus 3 times x plus 1. Okay? First technique is factor out a GCF. We learned this in chapter 4. Second technique is to factor a quadratic. We factored quadratics in chapter 4 also. Since the leading coefficient here is 8, we have to factor with our tic-tac-toe board. So 8x squared goes in the middle, negative 3 in the bottom corner. Multiplying those together gives us negative 24x squared. And making a list, obvious we have x times, or 8 times 3. One of them has to be negative, but that doesn't add up to 10. So let's try 2 and 12. If one of them is negative, we can make it add up to 10. We want it to add up to positive 10, so we want this pair, negative 2x and 12x. Taking out the GCF for the bottom row is negative 1. Top row is 4x. First column is 2x, and second column is 3. So this would factor as 4x minus 1 times 2x plus 3. The interesting thing about factoring quadratic trinomials is we could factor this quadratic trinomial even if it wasn't a quadratic. If this was, instead of x squared, if this was, say, x to the 6th, and then the 10 was x to the 3rd, we could still factor it as if it were a quadratic. So if we did that, we would have a 6 here and 3's here. So when we take out the GCF, the 4 would be 4x cubed, and the 2 would be 2x cubed, and you end up with exactly the same numbers. You would just have cubes on each of your things. We could do the same if it were, instead of 6 and 3, we could have this be a 4 and a 2. And so then when we factored it, we would end up with 2 here and 2 here. So you can use the quadratic trinomial method even when it's not actually a quadratic. Okay, our third example on this page is factoring a perfect square trinomial. You know that it's a perfect square trinomial when the first term is a perfect square, the last term is a perfect square, and then when you go to factor it, you will take the square roots. So we get square root of 4x squared is 2x, square root of 9 is 3, and we get identical factors here. When you multiply outside, you get 6x, inside another 6x, and that's where the 12 comes from. So it is a perfect square trinomial. When you factor it, it would factor as 2x plus 3 quantity squared. It is possible to factor your perfect square trinomial using the tic-tac-toe board, but if you recognize it as a perfect square trinomial, it's much easier to factor it just taking square roots. I'm going to stop this video here and continue factoring in the next video.